Hello, everyone. This is Jason Zeidema from the North American Maritime Ministry Association. It's wonderful to have you all here with us today for this special webinar on piracy on the world's oceans, the shifting threat. And we're in conversation with two friends from the MPHRP. Though piracy off the coast of Somalia has decreased in the past several years, it's not been eliminated in all parts of the ocean. Many victims of piracy still feel the effects of trauma years after. The Maritime Piracy Humanitarian Response Program has recently joined forces with the International Seafarers Welfare and Assistance Network to coordinate these resources. And today we're very happy to have MPHRP's Program Manager, Mr. Tom Holmer, and ISWAN's Executive Director, Mr. Roger Harris, to join us to discuss the current challenges and help us understand the challenges of piracy to seafarers in the coming years. Roger and Tom, thank you for being with us. Welcome.
Okay, thank you, Jason, thank you to you and NAMMA for inviting us to participate in this webinar this afternoon. We're sitting here in the sunny suburb of Croydon, in the suburb of London, and it's really good to talk to you all this afternoon. And I'd like to just kick off with the overview of piracy as we see it, and then I'll hand over to Tom, who will talk a bit more about the Maritime Piracy Humanitarian Response Program that ISWAN has just taken over. In fact, we took it over on the 3rd of August. So I'd just like to kick off really with just a quick definition really of piracy from the Oxford English Dictionary, and piracy is defined as the action of committing robbery, kidnap or violence at sea or from the sea without lawful authority. And there are a couple of other definitions I just put up. I won't read it all out, but there's a definition from the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, and also the definition from the IMO. So, as I said, I won't go through the slide, but they go into a bit more detail with the definition of piracy. As you probably all know, piracy is still with us, unfortunately. It's still in the news. These are the clippings I've just taken the last couple of weeks from some of the maritime media. And there are some cases, particularly in Southeast Asia, about ships being attacked by pirates. And I'd just like to say that the maritime piracy is a reality for a very small number of seafarers and their families. Relatively, a small number of seafarers have been attacked, given the number of seafarers there are. But the fear of maritime piracy is a reality for the majority of seafarers and their families. And I'd just like to look at the piracy in the last year or so, and this is a slide from the Oceans Beyond Piracy program. Their website is at the end of the presentation, and they're very much a partner with MPHRP and others in the fight against piracy. And as you probably know, I mean, piracy actually goes back way back, and there's reports of piracy as far back as the 14th century BC in the Mediterranean. And as we see from this slide, there's a high level of piracy attacks in Southeast Asia. In the Western Indian Ocean region, which is broadly off of the coast of Somalia, we see there was a big peak a couple of years ago, but it's dropped dramatically, thankfully. And in the Gulf of Guinea, there's a kind of uneven activity, but a bit of an increase over the last year or so. And what I'd like to do is probably just go through each area and look at it in a bit more detail. So in 2014, there were attacks. Over 5,000 seafarers were attacked. Just over 1,000 in the Gulf of Guinea, around off the coast of Nigeria and countries like that, Togo, Benin, Ghana. There were 320 seafarers attacked in the Western Indian Ocean off of Somalia, and well over 3,600 seafarers attacked in Southeast Asia, and that's off the coast of like Malaysia, Indonesia, and the Malacca Straits. And before we look at each area, I think it's really important that we mustn't forget the actual physical and psychological abuse that is inflicted upon seafarers in these pirate attacks. So I'd just like to look at the Western Indian Ocean off the coast of Somalia, the attacks in the last year in 2014. Now, Ocean-borne piracy documented 142 attacks, and what they defined as an attack were included what they call soft approaches or suspicious activity. But however, as you probably know, as Jason mentioned, there's been a dramatic decrease in the piracy activity off of Somalia, and there have been no merchant ships taken since May 2012. In 2012, before May, there were 14 ships captured by pirates. In 2011, there were 28 taken, and before that, in 2010, 47 ships were seized. And in 2009, there were 46 ships seized. And one of the main reasons for the dramatic reduction, well, two main reasons are the naval patrols off the coast of Somalia and the armed guards on ships. And in fact, Oceans Beyond Piracy did a survey of pirates who'd been captured and imprisoned, and they surveyed them in prison. And they survey revealed some really interesting findings, including that it was poor economic conditions were reported as the main reason for engaging in piracy. And the OBP said that long-term solutions to piracy need to address this. And in international navies, more than any other counter-piracy activity, were listed as a primary deterrent. So it's the naval patrol deterred the pirates. Armed guards aboard ships were also frequently listed. A substantial number of prisoners actually rejected the term pirate or piracy, maintaining that they were fishermen who were not guilty of piracy. And there's one of the causes of Somali piracy has been the fact that before 2008, ships went off of Somalia, international ships went off of Somalia and hoovered up a lot of the fish, and the fishers turned to piracy as a way of maintaining their livelihoods. Now, there is an issue about the continuance of the navies off of Somalia. The UN NAV4 force has a mandate until the end of 2016, to the 31st of December 2016. And we understand that that mandate is up for renewal in January 2016. So it's really important that we're vigilant about this. As I understand it, the ship owners and seafarers want the navies to remain because, you know, as I've just stated, there are main deterrent for piracy, for pirates, for pirate attacks. And you know, as I said before, one of the main issues is the fear of piracy. In fact, I was visiting a seafarer centre with Richard Kilgore a couple of weeks ago in Gdansk in Poland, and as we went into the seafarer centre, a couple of Chinese seafarers came out, and they said that they were on their way to Djibouti, which is just north of Somalia, and they were really concerned about going into those waters. So still, even though no ships have been seized for the last few years, there's still very much a big fear of piracy off of Somalia. And there's still one ship being held off of Somalia. Well, the ship has gone, but the crew are still being held. And this is a slide of the hostages that have been released since the beginning of 2014. The ship that's still being held is a fishing vessel. Well, the crew of the ship that's being held are crew from a fishing vessel. And it's really important that we don't forget them. That 26 of them are still being held. There were 29, but 3 died into captivity. So it's really important that they're never far from our thoughts. I just want to go on to the Gulf of Guinea, which is the area off of Nigeria, etc. And in the Gulf of Guinea, there were 67 attacks in 2014, but this was down from 100 in 2013. And of the 67 reported attacks, 26 were successful, involving a mix of robberies, oil theft, hostage kidnapping, and vessels detained for use as a mothership for future attacks. And the West African piracy operates under a different model than piracy off of Somalia. While kidnap for ransom is a common tactic off Nigeria, the pirates tend to kidnap only a few crew members, usually the highest ranking, and leave the rest, as opposed to taking the vessel and the whole crew hostage. For the most part, pirates in this area in the Gulf of Guinea focus on robbery or cargo theft. In either case, the crew tends to be auxiliary to the object of the attack, making their safety less of a concern to the pirates, and ultimately resulting in a greater level of violence towards the seafarers during the attack itself. So, of the Somalia, the crew themselves, if you like, are valuable. So those crew are taken hostage. So that although a number of them have suffered violence and torture, largely the crew aren't being attacked as such. But in the Gulf of Guinea, it's the cargo, it's the valuables that are seen as the important target for pirates, and therefore, unfortunately, the seafarers are expendable and therefore suffer a lot of violence. Most of the violence towards the crew tends to occur while the pirates are actually conducting the robbery or oil siphoning, with pirates often abusing them or tying them up during the attack. And it's estimated about over 1,000 seafarers were affected at the point of attack. Now, one of the other issues about piracy off the Gulf of Guinea is the underreporting. Not all attacks are reporting, and there are a number of reasons for this, and OBP highlights some of these reasons. One is that many of the countries in West Africa lack the necessary naval assets and other means to effectively respond to an incident. But there are incidences where the law enforcement agencies do respond, do arrest the pirates. Lengthy investigations follow. But these investigations often result in the detention of the vessel and the crew, and the costly delay in that ship's passage. And indeed, we heard the other day about, I think it's about 19 ships are being held in Nigeria by the government because they're suspected of being involved in siphoning of oil, etc. And they're being held with their crews. And another reason is that the absence of proper legislation means that although there's an adequate response, arrest, etc., the actual pirates are not prosecuted and often released. And in fact, in 2014, there were no prosecutions of pirates in Nigeria or the countries surrounding the Gulf of Guinea. So that's the situation in Gulf of Guinea. Just going to quickly look at Southeast Asia, and that's saw 185 incidents in 2014, and the piracy there is similar to West Africa. It's around theft, aggravated robbery, hostage taking, and similar to the Gulf of Guinea. The crew aren't kidnapped for ransom. The pirates don't have a financial incentive to refrain from violence against crews. And this is particularly true in relation to cargo theft incidents where robbers need prolonged time aboard the vessels while transferring the cargo. So consequently, the crew is often tied up, blindfolded, detained, or physically abused during this process. So that's an overview of what's happening in 2014. These are the nationalities of the seafarers affected, and it's probably no surprise that the majority, the biggest group, are Filipino seafarers. But it's quite interesting if you look at the Gulf of Guinea. A number of seafarers from the countries surrounding the Gulf of Guinea, Nigerian, Ghanaian seafarers have also been affected. And also, while the Maritime Piracy MPHRP program has supported seafarers in the Philippines, Asia, South Asia, Eastern Europe, Ukraine, etc. You see here from this slide that a number of Chinese seafarers have been affected, and the program has had difficulty in making contact with those seafarers. And just very briefly, before I bring on Tom, I just want to look at 2015, this year, excuse me. These statistics are from the International Maritime Bureau, and the way they report the attacks is slightly different from Oceans Beyond Piracy. So there's sometimes a bit of a discrepancy between the OBP figures and the IB figures. And in 2015, in the first 6 months of this year, there have been a total of 134 attacks, and this compares with 116 attacks in the corresponding period for last year. So in the first 6 months of this year, there's been an increase in the number of attacks compared to the first six months of 2014. And the figures broken down are of the 134 attacks, 106 vessels were boarded, 15 attempted attacks, 13 vessels hijacked. And in the first 6 months of this year, 250 crew were taken hostage, 14 assaulted, 10 kidnapped, 9 injured and 1 killed. And we can just see from this slide that the majority of these attacks, well, not the majority of the top 75%, are off of Indonesia, and that is obviously an area where there's cause for concern. So that's a kind of overview of what's happening with pirate attacks, and just the way it's shifted away from Somalia to West Africa and to Southeast Asia. So I'd just like to bring in Tom Holmer now, who has been appointed the MPHRP Program Manager. Tom's only been in the job since the 3rd of August, so he's done a great job so far. So I'd like to hand over to Tom just to explain a bit about what MPHRP is doing.
Thanks very much, Roger. Thank you, Jason, for organising this, and thank you for listening in. Okay, first of all, I wanted to have a look at what MPHRP has been doing in the last year. I mean, in fact, these figures are taken from key performance indicators which were produced for the calendar year between April 2014 and the end of March 2015. So that gives you a bit of an idea of what was a very busy time for the program. You can see that much of the program, many of you know the program actually probably better than I do, so please understand I'm not teaching my grandmother to suck eggs here, but it gives you an idea of the numbers of seafarers who have been reached through the program, both through training and awareness raising, but also through assistance following piracy attacks and with help for their families in cases where wages have not been paid, and all sorts of other economic and personal disasters which ensue from being held captive for months or years, or attacked with a lot of violence and suffering trauma. So both the program itself has had a lot of interest through social media, but it's also stretched itself out to cover a large geographical area and quite a number, several hundred seafarers and members of their families who have needed assistance from this program. Of course, the program is there to alleviate the effects of piracy, and Roger has given us a good overview of the current situation. Much of what the program has been dealing with has been the after effects and the long-term effects of the Somali piracy, of torture, long-term detention, hostage-taking, violence, and being held captive for years under very primitive and difficult conditions. I hope you'll agree with me that the program so far has done a fantastic job. No credit to me here, but very much credit to the people who have been running the program to date. Well, looking at what's happening now and also into the future, I mean, again, Roger has covered some of the changing tactics that pirates are using in order to continue to make money out of this revolting trade in people and in products, and particularly the changing nature of the kind of threats that seafarers face. Roger alluded to the fact that if EU NAVFOR and the other world's navies decide to leave the patrolling of the Somali coast, well then maybe there will be a return to the kind of lucrative piracy which has plagued the region for previous years. But at the moment it looks as though the emphasis has very much shifted to Southeast Asia, to the Malacca Straits and to West Africa. And much of what the IMB has been looking at is as much armed robbery, or indeed robbery without arms, but just with violence, in different ports along the coast and at anchorages. So seafarers are definitely not safe, and they suffer this constant threat of violence in these different areas of the world where piracy still exists. They also, I think, as we're seeing in West Africa, suffer from criminalization and detention, possibly as a result of a pirate attack or stealing of oil, perhaps getting implicated in the fact that, implicated in allegations of that they are implicit in allowing oil or cargo to be stolen. And then left at the mercy of legal systems which don't necessarily favour foreign nationals in these countries. So I think the programme has a job of work to do to really raise awareness of the difficulties that some seafarers face as a result of criminal acts committed on board their ships, where they are innocent victims, but where they are caught up in legal systems which really don't favour their freedom. I've put 3 questions in the bottom 3 of these points on this particular slide, which look at areas of the programme which we think have worked very well, but which need examination. How have welfare responders worked? Because they have really been trained in reasonable numbers over the last 18 months. And there are now over 200 of them. Well, how have they been used? How have they been able to help seafarers? Have they found the work satisfying? Have the seafarers found their interventions helpful? And Oceans Beyond Piracy have done, some work on this, both in looking at the interventions that seafarers receive and their needs following extended periods of detention in Somalia. What's the size and scale of the existing and future work with seafarers and their families? Well, this also harks on to the long-term effects of piracy. So how long will the programme need to support seafarers who have been the victims of piracy? Many of them who have been in Somalia for years come out without any wages being paid because their companies have gone bankrupt. How can the programme respond, or how can the industry respond to supporting seafarers who are left in that position and to the destitution of their families? And have we the right structure to deliver services? We have currently a very good regional structure with offices in Ukraine, in the Philippines and in India. And the work that these people have been doing in these different regions has been truly outstanding. So have we got the right structure to deliver services as piracy is changing and as the tactics and the results upon the seafarers of pirate attacks differ and change? There are a lot of resources which Roger has alluded to, and here are some of the web pages which you can have a look at if you're interested in looking in more depth at some of these issues, particularly the Oceans Beyond Piracy report, They have a summary report and they have a full report, which is very well worth reading. And then we'd just like to open it up to questions and ideas. So thank you for listening, and over to you, Jason.